Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another Mr Dilly Meets, a very, very special Mr Dilly Meets on location today. Today I have a fabulous guest for you. She is an author, she is an illustrator, and she is the author illustrator of the Amelia Fang series of books, the Rainbow Grey series of books, and she is back with her latest Marnie Midnight and the Moon Mystery. Please welcome the Mr Dilly Meets on location, the fabulous Laura Helen Anderson. First of all, before we sort of get into your book and the story of your books, what were you like at, say, at school at writing and illustrating? Were you good at both of them, or kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I spent my memories of childhood is getting home from school and at school, during the time when I could sneak one in, getting home from school and basically finding anything I could find to draw on, whether it be the back of a cereal box or tissue, or like we had paper, but I would just draw on anything. I mean, to the point where when I was very, very young, I decided to decorate the walls, which I don't recommend. But yeah, I think I created some rather nice artwork on my parents' duvet as well. But I was just drawing all of the time. I loved it, and I used to create a comic strip so we had numbered tables in year kind of 4, 5, 6. And I used to create a comic strip based on my friends on the table and bring it in like an issue each week.
So you're always, from your earliest memory, you're always drawing?
All the time. I was kind of like, known as the drawer. Can you draw this? Can you draw that? But then funnily enough, when I was a teenager, I kind of rebelled against it and didn't want to go into any kind of art. I was like, I'm going to be everything but. And I kind of had to go through that kind of experiment with a few different career options before I realised the passion really was in illustration, storytelling.
But was obviously you're an author and illustrator, which is amazing. But also, I don't know about you watching children, but it must be huge in terms of trying to come up with the writing and the illustrating. Did the writing come as a result of the illustration, or did you find that was an interest to you as well? How did that sort of come about? Was that quite late?
So again, the writing, and I think it's like the chicken and the egg thing, isn't it? The writing and the illustration kind of always happened side by side. So again, another example of this is like 1% of what I produced when I was very, very young at school, probably your age, and I would create a whole series of books called Who's There?
These are great. So these are your sort of.
I would just sit and draw for hours. And Saturdays were brilliant. We used to go to my nan's, and I would just go straight into the cupboard where the pink paper was and the colouring pencils.
The pink paper,
And I just always came up with. I was obsessed with magic and witches. Hence, and why I got magical.
I know it's kind of spurred into
time. And I still remember coming up with this. It was meant to be called the magic paw print, but for some reason I called it the magic footprint, even though it's a paw. So
did any of your you said about magic and did any of your illustrations then have they inspired any of your work as you've got older? Is there any bits in there that you sort of go actually?
I want to go through, and I would like to include a cheeky character from my child. And they probably have without me realising. So far, I haven't found a character that I have used yet. But I remember I was in Costa Coffee at the back of Oxford Street, doodling away, and I just doodled this little vampire, looking very similar to how Amelia looks now.
And that was it. Literally, the drawing was the inspiration for what then came after.
Yeah. So it all came from a sketch. That's how I always kind of explain the Amelia Fang birth. It all came from a sketch, and I never have. Characters' names always kind of just fall out of my brain. There's never
it's
a magical way how I come up with it. I was like, Amelia Fang.
So for you, it's just literally that little sketch.
Yeah, and you can be inspired by anything. I always say to any schools that I'm speaking to is, no matter how silly or small an idea might seem at the time, just jot it down, because you never know when you go back to it, and then it might become a published book one day.
That's true, yeah.
Because that was how Rainbow Grey happened. I had the idea for a character called Rainbow about 10 years before it actually.
And did you go back and then rediscover a note?
I had a drawing again, another drawing. Wow, yes. And as for Marnie, it's quite funny. I was actually visiting my parents this weekend and rummaging through old childhood drawings and found little bug characters and things.
It's in there. It's all in there.
It's been there before.
It's all interesting. So news you just mentioned Marnie Midnight and the Moon Mystery, the first of a new trilogy. Yes, a new trilogy. And tell us a little bit about the story behind this, if you can. To give us a little, without giving too much away, give us a little overview of the story.
Without any spoilers.
Yeah.
So Marnie Midnight is kind of my love letter to the moon and to moths and anything magical. As I say, I like to put everything I love into books, because then when I'm writing the story, hopefully that love oozes through the pages.
Yeah.
But I've always had this absolute fascination with the moon and the idea of moon magic and just that it could be magical, and so I kind of put all of that into Marnie's character. She believes in moon magic and that moths used to cast moon magic, but nobody else. They just say it's all a critter tale. But I mean, it's a bit of a mystery, as we see, but it is no secret that Marnie starts to discover some weird and wonderful things about the moon that she didn't know before. That's it. I like to, same for all of the books, I like to create characters, and even though Marnie is a moth and her best friend Floyd is, 29% ladybird and
he's mixed up.
But bee, I like to create characters that you can still relate to. They go through the same things we do.
Absolutely.
So even though they're bugs and there's lots of facts kind of turned around and twisted around into kind of written within the story as well. So it's kind of a bit of a merge of Amelia and Rainbow and my childhood and myself,
the whole
and
thing's
my friends and my family, basically.
So now we have a draw along for you, the first draw along of today's Mr Dilly Meets special with Laura Ellen Anderson. To get those pens, papers, pencils, crayons, whatever you need ready, and over to our first draw along with Laura. Off we go.
I'm going to show you how I draw Marnie Midnight right here. So Marnie Midnight, she's a very happy, enthusiastic moth, so I think it would be lovely to have her kind of looking up in surprise at the moon, of course. She's always glancing at the moon. So I usually start off with Marnie's round head, like so. And you can be quite messy when you start out. If you use a pencil and a light line, and then you can go over the top and tidy the lines up with a heavier pencil line. And to get the facial features in the right place, I often do a very light cross in the middle of the face. And then her eyes are either side of the cross. And then you can rub out pencil lines in the middle, like so. Okay. And I'm going to have Marnie looking upwards, so I draw her big pupils. And I don't have any colour on here, but you can add her orange irises in her eyes. So we've got Marnie's eyes looking upwards, and then we're going to have the eyebrows raised like so. And she will be smiling. And again, designing Marnie was quite a challenge, because she's a moth, but I needed to give her kind of almost human features as well. And so I played around with the shape of a moth's face, and we have this kind of little almost snout area. And of course, all of my characters often have freckles on their face. And we have her smiling like so. So what you can do is now add the hair. So she has a big messy fringe, like myself. And her hair is short and spiky. And you don't have to worry, again, don't worry if your lines get wobbly. Again, you can go back over them at the end and tidy them up. So her hair is a dark colour, and not forgetting the fluffy antennae on her head. So one has a little curly bit at the end, and the other one kind of curves upwards, and a bit like feathers or fern leaves. You have these lines going all the way up. And you can show the emotion with the antennae. If she's feeling sad, maybe they'll droop downwards, and when she's surprised, they'll shoot upwards, bolt upright. There's a lot you can do. And now for the exciting part, we get to the wings. We'll get there in a minute. So she's got a little fluffy collar. There's kind of 4 bumps there and 4 smaller ones at the back. And she's kind of got a raindrop shaped body, so it's quite a little torso, and this is where her jumper will be, and on her jumper is a little moon, and then the bottom of her torso is fluffy. You may have seen lots of fluffy moths in your time. Some of them are super fluffy, making them look really cute. And then Marnie has 6 limbs, so I chose to have 4 acting as arms and 2 as legs. So I will draw her arms kind of held outwards as she looks up at the sky in wonder. So 1, again, you can spend lots of time on your drawings. And we have the other ones here. Just exactly the same again, really. But you can have all 4 arms doing something completely different. So it might be that the 2 arms below are on her hips, whilst one's drinking from a cup of hot nectar. And then her big long legs, because she's a bug after all. So long spindly legs like so. But Marnie's always wearing a pair of spotty socks, so we can add a thicker bit at the bottom. She's wearing her socks. And then add lots of spots to the pattern. Because of course a moth wears socks. Why wouldn't they? Once we've added the socks, we're going to give her a little pair. I always imagine her wearing a little pair of red trainers or red Converse. So add those. Again, you can get out your best colouring pencils and colour her in. And just fill in the tops of the legs like so. And now for the wings. So the wings can be quite tricky sometimes, but just have fun with them. That's the main thing. So I like to describe them as they're almost like big mittens on either side. So we've got the first set of wings, kind of curve round, and we've got a bit of a curve like that. Okay, and we're going to do the same again on this side. Like so. And then we have the secondary wings, which are kind of like the same again, but a lot narrower. And again, you can do it over and over again until you're happy. There's another one, like so. And then the really fun part is decorating the wings. Now, you can do whatever you want with the wings if you design a moth character. For Marnie in particular, I wanted to make them have something to do with the moon. So we have 3 curved patterns up the top here. So everything's kind of sitting behind her arms. And then we've got a few more patterns down here. And these are all different colours. Imagine it like a lovely piece of fabric. And then we have what looks like the phases of the moon lining the bottom of her wings. We've got the full, the half, and a crescent for the half and the crescent, and then just create a little border, almost framing the moons, like so. And we have a few little sparkly spots around. And the secondary wings, they're much easier, they're just stripy. And you can get rid of the line underneath. Just have those showing on top, like so. And the other side of her wing is obviously the same, so when she turns round, it will look like that as well. And you just do the same again on the other wing. So it's almost like a mirror image of the other. So a few swirly patterns like so. The main thing is just to enjoy yourself, really. Moon phases, curved round. And the more you draw them, the more you'll get used to them. I found it really, really tricky to draw moth's wings at the beginning. And it's still tricky now, I won't lie, but it is still tricky now. But keep going, you'll get there in the end. We'll just go about that bit here. Yeah, mine's a bit messy, but you can keep yours much tidier than mine. There's her stripes, like so. And then you could just add a little bit of shadow just to ground her. She walks around a lot because she hasn't quite practiced her flying yet. And there you have your very own Marnie Midnight. That's a great question, thank you. And it's funny because I am working on the second Marnie Midnight cover at the moment, and it is proving quite a challenge. But see, with the cover, I always say not to overload it, because a lot of books are bought online these days, or you're often scrolling on your phone, so it's going to be tiny little thumbnails. So I try to create something that's still going to look quite striking from the teeny tiny or from a distance in a bookshop.
Sure, yeah.
So, for example, with Amelia Fang, we had the kind of style throughout each book was having the big mooned frame, the characters in the middle.
Hold that nice container, we'll see.
There we go.
Yeah.
Rainbow was way more of a challenge because of the amount of colours going on, and the title was always in her hair, so I had to think of a way to integrate her flowing hair into a picture and make it new and exciting for each book. But it's a really good challenge, even when you're kind of, finding it really tough, like I have been with Marnie too. Once you suddenly crack it, you're like, yes. And another good thing is to line up your books together to kind of see what they look like as a series or next to each other on the shelf. And with Marnie Midnight, I just wanted to celebrate her and her wings. That was really important. I wanted to be able to show all of her wings and kind of create a really striking logo that I could use on its own.
Moths are the main characters because of the moon. Was that why you chose that, or was it just because you drew that by and then it kind of came about from that?
The two kind of came together quite naturally because they always seem to be associated with each other as well. But I have always been fascinated with moths, and there's this idea that moths are the boring ones, and it's like really not, because you can get some absolutely beautiful. So I'm not a bug expert on any level, so when I first came up with the idea for writing the book, I was actually quite worried about starting. I was like, I don't know if I have what it takes to write this book. But it was a case of just reading up as I went along, finding out interesting facts, and then putting my twist on those facts. So, there aren't any specific types of moth or types of spider in this story. They're just moths, spiders. There's a ladybird with squares instead of spots, and just having fun with it and completely making it up. But yeah, I remember reading more and more about moths and just becoming more and more fascinated by them. And then, as I say, I've always been obsessed by the moon. It was kind of it was a running joke in university of I just loved anything to do, any films to do the moon, pictures, just anything.
Well, it is. I think it is, but it is magical. Obviously, it is magical. I mean, it is kind of. We get used to it. It's kind of odd.
Yeah, when you really think about it, you're like, wow, there's that lunar object
just sort of floating there.
And yeah.
I know. I can understand. I understand that. So, where does that love of language and rhyme come from? Was that from school, or was that just something that's kind of grown?
Do you know what? I guess so, because I have always been writing, and I've tried to work it out, but I'm just obsessed with alliteration. It seems
It's
like every time I'm coming up with the name of a character or a particular creature, I always seem to lean towards alliteration, which is fun and great when I'm writing it, but when I'm reading it out loud, suddenly
it makes it a little bit harder. It is a bit.
And I had to read some of Marnie out loud the other day for a particular event, and I feel very sorry for the narrator, who I'm sure has done an amazing job, and I'm sorry, and you're amazing. But no, I have lots of fun creating bouncy language, I like it to be quite lyrical. So when you're reading the story, bits of it can almost become almost like a song and get a musical. I'm going to be reading to you some Marnie Midnight and the Moon Mystery from chapter 1. And chapter 1 is called 27 Garden Fences Away. In the little town of Thimbledown stood a big budlet tree where some teeny tiny creatures lived. And these teeny tiny creatures were going on a very big adventure. The snail rail raced underground along the slime line at super speed. The bugs on board rode in colourful shell carriages, and the air was full of hums and clicks and flitters and flutters of critters of all shapes and sizes as they set off on their morning travels. One carriage in particular was positively bustling. Inside this little shell carriage sat the Midnights, a moth family who now had one less caterpillar and one more moth. For Marnie Midnight had recently transformed. Marnie was the first of her brothers and sisters to metamorphose from caterpillar to moth. She had cocooned on a drizzly Wednesday evening, wrapped up snug as her body changed. Marnie's days spent wriggling along ivy stems and chomping on cabbage leaves were now over. She had been there, done that, and got the caterpillar t-shirt. Now she was a big moth and ready to take on the world. Wiggling wormtails, I love having wings, cried Marnie, flapping them enthusiastically and almost knocking her little brother Milo out of the carriage window. Marnie hadn't quite got used to her new wings yet. They were much larger than she thought they'd be, and often got rather tangled. Moth's wings had all sorts of patterns on them. Marnie's were black and grey with curved white shapes that looked a bit like the moon. Marnie was very happy about this because she adored anything to do with the moon. She also had 2 fluffy feelers on her head, along with a mop of messy black hair and big orange eyes. Today, Marnie and her brand new wings were on a very exciting journey, accompanied by travel snacks, bubbly sap shakes, and some crispy crests for Milo, who was still a squidgy little caterpillar. Marnie's 48 other siblings were still tiny eggs stuck on the underside of a huge leaf at the very top of the budlet tree that was, by now, quite a few garden fences away. "It's wonderful to see you embracing your new form, little one," said Papa Moth, his floofy moustache hairs protruding almost as much as the hair on his slightly wonky antennae. Marvin Midnight was a wing doctor and always wore a jumper he'd knitted, usually one with very loud designs that cheered up his patients. "Being a moth is so much better than being a caterpillar," said Marnie with a grin as she chomped on a big bag of petal puffs. "I don't have to live on a diet of cabbage and cress anymore. Nectar is much yummier." "I still can't get over the fact you're off to Minibeast Academy," said Mama Moth, wiping a happy tear from her eye. Mabel Midnight was a chef at the Ruddy Carpet, their local restaurant, and always tried out the new recipes at home, much to Marnie's delight. Her large grey speckled wings engulfed Marnie in a warm hug. "It feels like only yesterday you started at the larvae learning zone. Look at you now, all grown up and off to big bug school." Marnie wriggled with joy. She clutched her acorn backpack, which was full to the brim with her new moon-themed stationery set and her favourite poster of Lenora Wingheart, the famous moonologist who had spent her life studying the mysteries of ancient moths and their use of moon magic. Lunora had been a pupil at Minibeast Academy too. Marnie wanted to be just like her, couldn't wait to follow in her flutterings.
So there you have it, a little taster there of Marnie and the Moon Mystery from Laura. Laura's kindly going to give us a little demonstration, I suppose, through her illustration process and how she comes up with her ideas and what she uses to do that, which is kind of an exclusive peek into her techniques. I don't know if they're secret or not, but they won't be for much longer.
Show you some. So I'm going to show you a little bit of behind the scenes of Marnie Midnight and how I basically come up with the drawings and the design. So everything kind of starts off in this big fat sketchbook here, and this is my place where I can let all of the ideas that I have just fall out of my brain onto the paper. Some of them will get used, some of them won't get used at all. Some won't see the light of day, but we have lots of sketches in here of various bugs, some made up, inspired by other things. As you can see, they're just like splodges on paper, but the important thing is I understand what I'm looking at. So I can use all of this as reference throughout writing and drawing. I have a little poster of moths and butterflies, writing down all of my inspiration and then starting to come up with the cover design as well. Once I've got enough sketches and I've got a rough idea of what the character looks like, I move it to digital means. So I work on Photoshop and I use a drawing tablet, and mostly because you have to turn around a lot of illustrations in a very small amount of time, and it's much easier to edit an illustration if you're working on the computer. So for example, some of my roughs might look a bit like this. This is one of the illustrations when Marnie's wings were looking a little bit different. I hadn't quite worked out what they were going to look like. She had a slightly different outfit. Her mum didn't really change. She kind of stayed exactly the same, and there's a very rough version of her dad because I think I changed his design a few times. Then once I'm kind of happy with the really rough version, I will turn it into its final illustration like so. So I'll just show you a close-up of that. So as you can see, I've added far more detail, all of the tones, and because the illustrations are black and white, obviously there's no colour on these illustrations, but the cover does have colour, and that's great fun. And the nice thing about working on Photoshop and on the computer is that I can experiment with different colours. So for example, if I wanted to change the background colour of this, I will go right into the artwork, and I'm going to do something very drastic now, and then I'm not going to press save because I will overwrite this file. But let's imagine we wanted it more of a deep kind of purpley, maybe a magenta colour like so. And then I'll get the paint pot, drop it in and just see what that looks like. I quite like that actually. So there's so much you can do. You can experiment, and nothing is final. So if you make a mistake, it really doesn't matter. So it's very hit and miss. You just experiment, have lots of fun with it. And you can go from a messy illustration like so to a really neat illustration. And then before you know it, you have 100 odd illustrations ready to be put into the book. And that's where the lovely publisher and designer will come in. Brilliant, far short. I think most of the time, really, because you just have to keep going. And even when even though I always say the best job in the world, I really enjoy it, but there will be really tough times. So and especially when you're getting the opinions of readers, you do have to just be resilient. The first Rainbow Grey book was not a walk in the park. No book is a walk in the park. And whenever you see a finished book and you read that book, you have to know that so much of an author and illustrator's soul, blood, sweat and tears have gone into every page. But I remember getting to the point with Rainbow 1 where I thought, I don't know if I can actually do this. It got so bad. But then you do have to just take a step back from it all and be kinder to yourself. And I say this to other people, but then you never take your own advice again. But you just have to, like with anything, try again, try again, try again. You will always get there in the end. As Rainbow Grey always says, she finds she finds it a bit difficult to focus on words, and reading takes a bit longer, but she will keep going. Don't give up. So as I said earlier on, always write down any little silly thing that might inspire you. You know, I was even, when I was trying to think of an Evil Emperor Penguin story, I was inspired by Bin. But I get a lot of inspiration from my friends and family. So, for example, there's a lot of my granddad John, bless him, he's sadly not with us anymore, but there's a lot of him in this book. So he had nicknames for all of the family. I was Twiglet. My sister was Budlet, which is why we've got the Budlet tree
wonderful. That's
here.
Wonderful. That's wonderful.
And we've got Twiglet in Rainbow Grey. And he was always making up names for birds and things, and he's like the great crested bedstead, and so it would sound like a real.
Now we know where it all comes from. It's in there.
Exactly.
You see, where you go.
So
that's wonderful.
Grandad John was just an absolute joy.
Yeah,
and
wonderful.
It was so funny. I'm often inspired by food. Food is a big thing. So originally in Amelia Fang, her mother, Countess Frivolita, was Countess Aubergine, but we changed for Sparrow.
Now we have a chance for you to flex those creative muscles again with another draw along with Laura, and a chance at the end of it for you to win your very own signed copy of Marnie Midnight and the Moon Mystery. Over to Laura.
I'm going to show you how to draw Star Vonstrosity, a little ant with a big personality. And she's quite simple, really. So we have Star's kind of oval head, like so. And then she has little dot eyes and a big pair of lovely glasses, like so. And she's often looking unimpressed. So we're going to have one eyebrow kind of flat and one eyebrow raised, as if to say, why? But we're going to give her a smile in this picture, I think. So, like, I told you so. She always wears a bow tie. So you can make that any colour you like. You can rub out the lines underneath. Or just fill it in, actually. Probably easier. And let's not forget her 2 antennae, like so. And then for the body, we're just going to do 2 straight lines, and then a round bit at the bottom, and then we'll just add a few lines at the bottom half, and she wears a little waistcoat on the top half, like so. And for the legs, I gave her 4 legs and 2 arms. So we're going to have 1 leg like so, second leg pointing slightly forward. Again, you can have lots of fun doing lots of different things for each leg. And because she's a very serious bug, she's always kind of, and she's used to marching with the other ants in the 7 ant hills. So, and also this is a really good way of not having to draw hands, is I can draw her arms behind her back. Add a little bit of shadow. And that is Star Vonstrosity.
If you have the idea of the character for the illustration, does the name then come after the illustration, and then does the name sort of add other elements to the drawing of the character?
Yes, actually, yeah, because I mean, Marnie Midnight wasn't always Marnie Midnight. I can't remember exactly when I came up with Marnie. Obviously, Marnie Moth, it's alliteration again, but she was Marnie Moon for a while, and then she was going to be a moon moth, and then I thought, no, I'm just going to make her just a moth in this fantastical world.
It's I think this may not be true, but this is just in my opinion from when I was a child, that all great fantasy books start with a map. So I'm thinking like Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, and the Narnia books, the Terry Pratchett Discworld books, all these kind of things. And lo and behold, Laura's Marnie Midnight and the Moon Mystery starts with a map. So show us the map if you've got it there. So we have the map.
Here we have the map of Marnie Midnight, and it's showing the town of Thimbledown. So the town of Thimbledown is obviously a human town. Now the bugs in the book, the main characters, refer to humans as anything but. So they'll be referred to as screamers by the bees, swatters by the flies, and stompers by the ants, for example. So they have all kind of different names. But basically we have the town of Thimbledown, and there's the Museum of Nature. And in the back gardens of the Museum of Nature is a big budlet tree. And I got the name Budlet because it was this one here.
Yeah.
And that is Minibeast Academy. So I imagined just this kind of hollowed out tree with lots of tunnels and bits and bobs.
So this is where Marnie goes to on a journey. She goes to them.
So it's 27 garden fences away from where she lives. And sorry, her home is the Budlet Tree. That's my mistake. Her home is the Budlet Tree. Minibeast Academy is over here behind the museum in the gardens. And we've got Minneapolis, which is a thriving bug city towards the front of the museum. But that distance might not seem a lot to us, but to a bug that is.
There's a long way.
And then we've got good old Trashford on the way. So.
Would you agree? I don't think you say this. Do you think all the best fantasy books start with maps?
Ah, yes.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, there you go. So that's that one sorted. And would you
So what I like to do, if I've got really good ideas that I want to happen in the story, but I'm not sure where I want them to go, obviously just write them all down. And I think, as I was saying earlier, you're piecing everything together and structuring the story first. So you might go through chapters and phases where it feels like nothing exciting is happening, but you can go back and insert all of that excitement and humour. And then when you're having those really good writing days and you can't have all the funny, quirky bits, suddenly you think, oh, actually, I can put this funny bit here and that bit there.
And then you like rearrange.
It's a lot, and a lot of rearranging comes at draft 2 as well. So there might be a funny moment that happens towards the end of the story, which actually fits in better earlier on. And it's always really important to have your characters sorted out before you write the story too, because they make it.
Would you have a favourite character or favourite? I mean, is it Marnie your favourite character, or do you have a favourite part of the book or anything else like that?
Well, I feel like so she can't hear me, but I love writing Floyd's scenes. The banter between Floyd and Star, I have so much fun with, because Floyd is very flamboyant and a bit silly, and he panics and he's always clutching his pearls and Star's like, stop, and she's like, have some backbone. He's like, we don't have a backbone. So little things like that.
Little bits of
and so when I find I'm writing first drafts, I've just finished the first draft of book 2, and there were some chapters where I thought, this feels really dry, and it doesn't feel like it's got the character in it. But I thought, just get the bare bones of the story down, then go back, start adding the humour, and suddenly when you start, it all starts.
Or just sort of churns
out.
That's good advice, actually. Get the story down first, and then go back and.
Don't worry. I mean, I'm not one to take my own advice, but because when you're actually in it, it's hard. But you do have to just get the structure down. It's like building a house. You don't have the foundations there, you can't build the rest.
No, so get the bones of it.
Or like a cake. So make it. You just layer it up, make it more and more interesting. And then by the second, third draft, you've got a lot of the characters in there. And
that's really interesting. Don't try to do it all at once, I guess. Just sort of bit by bit.
I'm going to be reading to you a section of chapter 3 from Marnie Midnight and the Moon Mystery. At this point in the story, Marnie has met a lovely bug called Floyd Frombidium, who is part bee, part ladybird, and part mystery, and they are just about to arrive at a very exciting place. We're here! Papa Moth cried happily. Marnie gulped. She'd been so excited to start Minibeast Academy, but now she was actually here, she was getting fluttery feelings in her toes. As the Midnight family stepped out of the shell carriage, Floyd twirled one antenna and said quietly, "Do you mind if we walk into Minibeast Academy together?" Marnie smiled at him. She sensed he was feeling just as nervous as her. "Of course," she said. Linking arms with Floyd, she immediately felt so much better. It was lovely to already have a friend. Floyd let out a relieved sigh. I fear I might shed 5 to 10 tears of happiness, but that would make my face all puffy, and you don't want to see my puffy face. It looks like a beetle's bottom. Marnie found herself in fits of giggles. It was impossible not to smile around Floyd Flombidium. Other bugs starting school were also leaving the snail rail with their families. A teeny tiny ant with a huge backpack marched along confidently. A tall stick insect stepped right over the heads of the crowd and lolloped through the bustling bugs. A nervous-looking centipede scurried past a trio of moody-looking mosquitoes, and a ladybird with squares instead of spots plodded along. There were so many different bugs here, and Marnie couldn't wait to meet them all. She gasped extra loudly when she saw the bright, bold yellow and purple wings of a beautiful butterfly making her way through the crowd. Golden heart shapes on each wing glittered in the sunlight. I've always wanted to meet a butterfly, Marnie breathed. You've never met one before? Asked Floyd, surprised. Butterflies are mostly awake during the daytime when I'm fast asleep, explained Marnie. But now I can talk to them and see their amazing wings up close. Don't underestimate your own beautiful wings, Marnie, said Mama Moth kindly. Marnie smiled at her mum as she tried to spot the butterfly in the crowd again. She loved her own new wings, but she knew they'd never be as bright and colourful as butterflies. Attention, first-year bugs, called out an efficient-looking firefly in a bow tie. His abdomen suddenly erupted with yellowy-green light. My name is Squire Fly Fred. I am a 4th-year student at Minibeast Academy and I will be your guide. Marnie felt her wings flicker faster and faster with nervous excitement, causing Floyd's hat to waft off of his head. Feel free to ask me any questions you might have over the next few days and nights, apart from just after dinner, continued Firefly. That is when I carry out my essential nightly belly brightening routine. Now, please follow me. I guess just to have faith in your ideas. Again, doesn't matter how silly it might seem.
Yeah.
And don't worry. Do not worry if you make mistakes, because it happens to all of us. And I can tell you there's at least one in every one of my books. So that is one thing, because I would panic like nobody's business if I've always been a perfectionist. But now that I'm realising that, you can't be perfect, even when you're a published author, that doesn't mean you are perfect at writing.
No.
And I would tell my younger self and say, don't worry.
Don't
it's all about the idea,
Yeah.
and then all of the grammar and perfecting things can come a bit later.
Do you have a favourite fact about moths or caterpillars at all? Apart from that poor moth earlier with the no mouth, no, what was it?
Well, yes, the lunar moth, which is a very beautiful moth. I think you can only find it in North America though. But it's like a beautiful, almost kind of fluorescent green colour. And as a caterpillar, the lunar moth is really hungry. So it is the hungry caterpillar. But when it transforms into its beautiful moth-like self, it has no mouth and no digestive system, and only lives for a week because it doesn't eat.
So whenever you're having a difficult day, kids, just think of this awful life of this horrible, being a lovely creature, but what a life. That's not a life, is it?
Exactly.
I don't know. And then they place it in front of a cake and just let it say that we can't eat this. I mean, what kind of world are we living in? Anyway, so that's a very sad but fascinating fact from Laura for that. Okay, lastly, what's next for Marnie? So you said you're writing book 2, or you've got the first draft of book 2 there. So can you give us any sort of little clues as to where we're going with this?
So obviously she's been in school for a little while now. She's got her best friends. You see a bit more of Veronica Spottage, or Spottage, it's pronounced. And we really get to delve into her relationship with Marnie, because it's a spiky relationship. So it's really interesting to see that, because, we all go through it at school where we have little bickers and arguments, and it's life. And there is a big competition taking place, and I can't say what it is because it is the title
Of the book. Better give
but
away.
it's another good tongue twister, so when we're ready to announce that, I'll get you to say it 10 times in advance.
And thank you all so much for joining me today for this very, very special Mr. Dilly Meets. And thank you to my fabulous guest, Laura Ellen Anderson. Fabulous to have you with us. More Mr. Dilly Meets coming up. But for now, my name is Mr. Dilly and it's goodbye from me. And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye, my friend. Goodbye.